Referees. Love it or hate them, they're a very important aspect of football, as a single call can determine the outcome of an entire game.
Personal foul, unnecessary roughness, defense number 91.
You can't even fart on guys anymore, they call a flag.
The 2021 NFL season hasn't lacked in thrilling games, action-packed drama, and, oh yeah, officiating controversies. Once again, referees have often taken center stage with some brutal calls or no calls that greatly impacted the outcomes of games. Until the NFL changes some of its protocols when it comes to reviews, hello Sky Judge, the officiating miscues simply won't end. Here are just 20 of the absolute worst officiating calls from the 2021 NFL season, at least so far. Frank Clark's roughing the passer penalty. And count on the officials to make a game-changing call that greatly affected the outcome of the Kansas City Chiefs-Buffalo Bills Sunday Night Football showdown in Week 5. It was only, perhaps the most highly anticipated game of the regular season. The Bills were clinging to an 11-point lead in the fourth quarter. Facing a 3rd and long situation, Josh Allen attempted a deep pass that was picked off by Rashad Fenton, seemingly bringing KC right back into the game. However, Frank Clark was penalized for roughing the passer, which was a totally ridiculous call. Buffalo would melt the clock and put the game away with an Allen touchdown pass to Emmanuel Sanders. Remember this call when the postseason comes around. It could very well impact whether or not the Chiefs end up making it. Chris Godwin gets away with blatant offensive PI. What more can we say? It's almost impossible to be a defensive back in today's NFL. You get penalized for barely touching a wide receiver, and yet, far more often than not, those same wideouts are allowed to push off without being penalized. Case in point, Chris Godwin on Jordan Lewis in the Week 1 Thursday kickoff game between the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and Dallas Cowboys. That catch would set up Ryan Succop's game-winning field goal that gave the defending champs a season-opening victory. But not without controversy. I mean, how is that not offensive pass interference? I guess it only makes sense to open up the season with a bad call like that. Davante Adams' uncalled headshot. You know how the NFL has put a ton of safety rules in order to protect players? Well, the least the officials ought to do is call the most obvious stuff, especially when it's a reckless, violent shot to the head, such as the one Davante Adams took during the Week 3 Sunday Nighter between his Green Bay Packers and the San Francisco 49ers. The Packers would go on to win the game anyway, with Adams making several clutch plays to set up Mason Crosby's game-winning field goal. So you could say that Adams got the last laugh, but it's still troubling to see the officials miss such an easy penalty that's right in front of their faces. Delay of game much. Justin Tucker made history when he kicked the longest field goal in NFL history, 66 yards to be exact, to help the Baltimore Ravens get past the Detroit Lions. However, Tucker's record setter doesn't happen if not for the officials missing an obvious delay of game penalty, one play before the field goal. You just cannot miss that. It's not a judgment call, it's in the rulebook for crying out loud. Darren Waller's taunting penalty. The NFL's new rules against taunting were always going to be controversial and poorly received by fans. Here's hoping the NFL does what it did with pass interference reviews. Scrap them after 1 year. Perhaps the worst taunting call of the 2021 season up to this point was when Darren Waller got flagged for spiking the ball out of bounds during the Raiders' Week 4 Monday night game against the Los Angeles Chargers. Come on, NFL, these guys aren't robots. The Steelers' offside penalty nullifies kick 6. Trailing the Green Bay Packers by 4 points in their Week 4 tilt, the Pittsburgh Steelers special teams seemingly came up with a game-changing play at the end of the first half, as Mason Crosby's field goal attempt was blocked and returned for a touchdown. But of course, there was a flag on the play. And not for your typical illegal block in the back stuff. Rather, the Steelers were curiously flagged for offside on the play. The former NFL official and current CBS rules analyst Gene Steratore clearly explained why this should not have been a foul. That questionable call really hurt Pittsburgh's chances of coming back, as they lost 27-17. Yep, consider this another call that could end up impacting the postseason race and seeding. Quincy Williams for roughing the passer. What's a list about bad officiating calls without several roughing the passer penalties? How on earth could the refs possibly throw a flag here on Quincy Williams for delivering a clean hit to Matt Ryan? That right there was a textbook tackle. If you're gonna outlaw hits like that on quarterbacks, you may as well ban sacks or turn it into flag football. Justin Herbert sacked? This awful call just had to come near the end of a thrilling showdown between Dak Prescott's Cowboys and Justin Herbert's Chargers. The Chargers trailed 17-14 with 5.5 minutes to go. Facing pressure on a pivotal second and goal situation, Herbert backpedaled and threw the ball away to seemingly avoid a sack. However, the officials determined that Herbert was actually sacked on the play, even though the film says otherwise. And so, the Chargers were forced to settle on a game completion and a field goal to tie the game as opposed to going for the lead on 3rd and goal. Dallas went on to win on a last-second Greg Zuerlein field goal, and the Cowboys avoided a disastrous 0-2 start. How is this not a catch? Julio Jones made a jaw-dropping tiptoe catch in the back of the end zone against the Seattle Seahawks in Week 2. Following league protocol, the NFL went to review the scoring play to make sure it held up. We all know the number one rule when it comes to reviewing plays is there has to be enough evidence to overturn the call. Plain and simple. But when we watch this Jones play time and time again, all we see is a clear-cut highlight reel touchdown catch. Yet somehow, in some way, the officials reviewed this and determined it wasn't a touchdown. So Tennessee ended up having to settle for a field goal instead of the touchdown. The good news for Titans fans was that they wound up winning in overtime, although this call did cost Julio Jones fantasy owners. Forgetting the rulebook 101. If you go to the NFL rulebook for player conduct, you'll see that the following is a 15-yard unsportsmanlike conduct penalty. Removal of his helmet by a player in the field of play during a celebration or demonstration or during a confrontation with a game official or any other player. Well, what do we have here? Oh look, Lavonte David clearly removed his helmet in the field of play after dropping a would-be interception. No foul, you say? Well, that could have changed the outcome of the game considering that the Dallas Cowboys only lost by 2 points. Dak Prescott robbed of TD. ×2. Regardless of how many total touchdowns Dak Prescott finishes with, the guy got robbed of at least 2 rushing scores that looked like clear touchdowns this season. The first one took place on Monday Night Football against the Philadelphia Eagles in Week 3. Dak tried sneaking it in on 4th and goal, but he was stopped short. At least according to the officials. Something similar happened to Dak when he tried sneaking it on 4th and goal against the New England Patriots in Week 6. You be the judge if he broke the plane here. And wouldn't you know it, on the next play, Dak would end up fumbling the ball before breaking the plane. Good thing Dallas won both games, or Cowboys fans would never live down those 2 questionable rulings.
Let's go whoop their ass in the second half.
Missed pass interference call. The Los Angeles Chargers managed to defeat the Kansas City Chiefs 30-24 at Arrowhead in Week 3, but not without a little bit of serendipity. On the final play of the game, Patrick Mahomes attempted a Hail Mary that fell short of the end zone. But when you take a closer look at the play, you'll see that the Chargers got away with 2 infractions. Tyreek Hill is being bear hugged and Travis Kelce is being tackled. Kansas City should have had 1 more chance to win the game, but of course, the officials missed 2 obvious penalties here. Offensive PI equals defensive PI. If you're gonna throw a flag here, it has to be offensive pass interference, if anything. But yeah, this is the NFL, so the refs decided to penalize the defender for being interfered with. A frustrated Baker Mayfield stated post-game that the league should simply forward the fine letter now before blasting officials for what was quite simply a terrible performance. Can you really blame him? Forward progress wipes out Panthers' fumble recovery. Carolina Panthers safety Jeremy Chin clearly stripped Dalton Schultz of the football on this play, but not according to the officials. No, they didn't rule it an incomplete pass, but rather they granted Schultz forward progress and thus wiped out a key turnover early in the first quarter.
The instant that Schultz is hit, the ball comes loose. It's not forward progress. But unfortunately for Carolina, this is not reviewable.
Dallas would score a touchdown on that drive, and they wound up winning by 8 points. Dexter Lawrence's offside penalty gives Washington another chance. The New York Giants seemingly avoided a 0-2 start when Washington kicker Dustin Hopkins missed a game-winning 48-yard attempt on the final play. Or so we thought. The officials penalized Dexter Lawrence of the Giants for going offside, which gave Hopkins a second chance to win. He made good on the 43-yarder to give Washington their first win of the season while dropping the Giants to 0-2. Clearly, however, Lawrence wasn't offside and actually timed his jump perfectly. Being a Giants fan these days is tough enough. Having calls like that cost you a game? Even worse. GENARD AVERY penalized for taunting. The Philadelphia Eagles trailed by 21 against the Bucs on Thursday Night Football in Week 6, but they rallied for 15 unanswered points to make it a 6-point game. The defense just needed one more stop, and Jalen Hurts just needed one more possession for Philly to complete the upset. But the Eagles' comeback hopes were dashed when GENARD AVERY was flagged for taunting Bucs running back Leonard Fournette. The refs may have seen taunting, but what we saw was absolutely nothing. Sure, refs, whatever it takes to affect the game, right? Tampa Bay would retain possession the rest of the way and hold on for the win. Nudging quarterback equals roughing the passer. I can totally understand the NFL's desire to protect quarterbacks. After all, more often than not, they are the faces of the league and many of its franchises. But roughing the passer penalties like this one from the Browns-Arizona Cardinals Week 6 game are not what anyone wants to see. How in the world does Malik Jackson get penalized for barely touching Kyler Murray?
He didn't even knock him to the turf.
Wow. You're all about keeping quarterbacks safe, being a former quarterback. There wasn't much there.
Awfully protective.
Now, this is actually offside, refs. We already showed you 2 offside penalties on field goal attempts that weren't actually penalties. And if that doesn't bother football fans enough, how about when officials miss the most obvious of offside penalties? The Chicago Bears were victims of this when they hosted the Packers in Week 6. Chicago, up by 7 late in the first quarter, faced a 3rd and 7 situation. Green Bay clearly jumped offside, but officials missed it as Justin Fields threw a pick to Darnell Savage. Unnecessary roughness equals legal? Las Vegas Raiders wide receiver Hunter Renfrow took several hard hits during the team's Week 1 Monday night game against the Baltimore Ravens. The Raiders were so fed up with the refs ignoring the clear-as-day cheap shots their wideout was taking that they actually filed a complaint against the league. Out of all the cheap shots on Renfrow, however, this one might take the cake. Did officials forget that you're allowed to penalize someone for unnecessary roughness? Chase Young, roughing the passer ×2. Washington star pass rusher Chase Young is gonna be one of the game's most exciting stars for many years to come. But being a top-notch pass rusher and all, Young will unfortunately be the victim of many horrible officiating calls throughout his career. For instance, when he was penalized here for roughing the passer on Daniel Jones. 2 weeks later, Young was also penalized for a perfectly clean hit on Matt Ryan. And I'm sure there are more of these horrendous calls to follow, people. But which do you think is the worst officiating call of the 2021 NFL season so far? Join us in the comment section below. If you like this video and learned a thing or two, clicking the like button helps out a ton. And hey, we appreciate it. If this is your first time coming around to TPS though, subscribing is a great idea because we put out videos like this every single day. But as always, thanks for watching and we'll see you guys next time.